The grand hall of the crystalline palace sparkled with an otherworldly glow. Thousands of light crystals floated near the high ceiling, casting rainbow patterns across the gathered council members. Princess Azure stood before the 12 elder council members, her translucent blue skin shimmering with determination. She was tired of following the old ways, tired of being surrounded by predictable guards who thought in straight lines and perfect patterns. "I want humans as my personal security team," she announced, her voice clear and firm. The council chamber erupted in whispers. Elder Bright, the head of the council, leaned forward on his crystal throne. His aged face showed deep concern as he adjusted his ceremonial robe. "Princess, surely you jest," he said. "The crystalline guards have protected the royal family for 10,000 years. They are perfect in every way. Their minds are like flawless diamonds, pure, clear, and exact." "That's exactly the problem," Azure replied, pacing the polished floor. "They're too perfect, too predictable. Everyone in the galaxy knows exactly how they'll react to any situation. It makes us vulnerable." Elder Moon, the youngest council member, spoke up. "But humans are." She paused, searching for a diplomatic word. "Unstable. They rely on something they call gut feelings instead of pure logic. They make mistakes." Azure smiled. "Yes, they make mistakes. They also learn from them. Last month, I watched security footage from the Earth Embassy. A human guard caught a thief not because of fancy technology or perfect protocols, but because something felt wrong. He noticed a pattern that didn't fit, something our AI systems missed completely." The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The idea of relying on feelings and instincts went against everything their society valued. "Besides," Azure continued, "humans are the only species in the known galaxy that turns their weaknesses into strengths. They're physically weaker than many races, so they built tools. They can't survive in space naturally, so they engineered amazing ships. They can't process information as fast as our crystalline brains, so they learned to think creatively." Elder Bright stood up, his crystal staff tapping against the floor. "Princess, this is unprecedented. The public will not understand. Our citizens expect certain standards, certain traditions. Our citizens expect to be protected," Azure cut in. "And right now, we're vulnerable precisely because we're so predictable. The recent attempts to breach palace security prove this. Our enemies know exactly how our guards will respond. They can plan for it." The council chamber fell silent. The recent security breaches were a sore point. 3 attempts in the past month alone, each getting closer to success than the last. "I've already contacted the Earth Embassy," Azure revealed, causing several council members to gasp. "They have a list of qualified candidates. All I need is your approval to begin the selection process." Elder Moon studied the princess carefully. "You've given this serious thought." "I have. I've studied human security operations for the past year. They're not perfect, but that's their strength. They think in ways our enemies can't predict. They see patterns we miss because we're too focused on perfection." Elder Bright sank back into his throne, looking suddenly tired. "The princess makes valid points," he admitted reluctantly. "Perhaps we have become too set in our ways." The council members looked at each other, having silent conversations through subtle changes in their crystal formations, a traditional way of sharing thoughts among their species. Finally, Elder Bright spoke again. "We will allow a trial period. You may select a human security team, but they must prove themselves before we make this arrangement permanent, and they must follow our basic protocols." Azure's skin sparkled with joy, the crystalline equivalent of a broad smile. "Thank you, Council. I promise you won't regret this decision." As she left the chamber, Azure couldn't help but feel excited. Change was coming to the crystalline empire. And for once, it wouldn't be perfectly planned out. Sometimes, she thought, the best things in life came from a little chaos. The council watched her leave, their faces showing varying degrees of concern and curiosity. None of them knew it yet, but this decision would change their empire forever, and possibly save it in the process. The Earth Embassy's meeting hall looked strangely plain compared to the crystal structures of the royal palace. Princess Azure sat behind a simple wooden table, watching as 20 human candidates filed into the room. Their footsteps echoed off the metal floors, so different from the silent grace of her own people. "Are you sure you want to conduct the interviews personally, Your Highness?" asked Elder Moon, who had been assigned to oversee the process. "It's not proper for royalty to know who will be protecting their life." Azure finished the sentence with a slight smile. "I think that's exactly what royalty should do." The first candidate stepped forward. Jack Stone stood straight, his military background obvious in his posture. His plain black uniform had no special decorations or technology, just practical fabric and a few hidden pockets. "Your record shows you broke protocol during the Mars colony crisis," Azure said, reading from a holographic display. "You disobeyed direct orders." "Yes, Your Highness," Jack replied without hesitation. "The protocol would have left civilians in danger. I found a better way." Elder Moon's skin clouded with disapproval, but Azure nodded thoughtfully. "Tell me about this better way." "Instead of evacuating up through the main shafts like procedure dictated, we used the maintenance tunnels. Less obvious, more escape routes. The attackers didn't expect it because it wasn't in any official protocol." Azure's skin sparkled with interest. This was exactly what she had been talking about to the council. Next came Maria Torres. She wore simple business attire and carried herself with quiet confidence. "You were involved in 15 diplomatic protection missions," Azure noted. "No casualties, but several unusual incidents." Maria smiled slightly. "I believe in preventing problems before they become emergencies. Sometimes that means doing unexpected things, like hosting a dance party during peace negotiations." Azure asked, reading from her notes. "The two arguing parties needed to see each other as people, not enemies. Dancing did what talking couldn't." The interviews continued. Tom Reed, the tech specialist, demonstrated how he could turn ordinary objects into security tools. He transformed a simple pen into a signal detector right before their eyes. "Sometimes the best technology is the one nobody expects you to use," he explained, showing how the pen could detect hidden surveillance devices. Rose Parker, the medical expert, was last. She didn't have the combat record of the others, but something about her caught Azure's attention. "You once treated an alien dignitary by telling them jokes," Azure read, puzzled. "How is that medicine?" Rose's eyes crinkled with warmth. "Laughter affects body chemistry in many species. The dignitary's crystalline structure, similar to your people, actually, was too rigid from stress. Making them laugh helped their crystals realign naturally. Sometimes healing isn't just about following medical protocols." Elder Moon watched with growing concern as Azure selected all 4 humans for her team. "Your Highness, these humans, they all have records of breaking rules, of doing things differently. Surely that's a warning sign." Azure turned to her advisor. "No, Elder Moon. It's exactly why I chose them. Our enemies know all our rules. They study our protocols. But how can they plan against people who look at problems in completely new ways?" The 4 selected humans stood together, an unusual group by any standard. They didn't have the uniform perfection of crystalline guards. They didn't even match each other. But Azure saw something in them that her people had forgotten. The ability to adapt, to think differently, to surprise. "Welcome to my security team," she announced. "I know this is unusual for everyone, but I believe you're exactly what the Crystalline Empire needs right now." As they left the embassy, Elder Moon made one last attempt. "The council will not be pleased with these choices, Your Highness." Azure watched her new team walking ahead, already talking and getting to know each other. "The council doesn't need to be pleased, Elder Moon. They just need to be protected. And I have a feeling these humans are going to surprise everyone with how well they do that." The princess smiled as she heard Jack crack a joke. making the others laugh. Yes, this was going to be very different from the silent, perfect order she was used to. And that was exactly the point. The Cloud Nebula Alliance's grand reception hall floated among the stars, its transparent walls offering a breathtaking view of the swirling purple and blue gases outside. Princess Azure stood among the gathered diplomats, her new human security team positioned carefully around the room. Jack Stone watched from near a refreshment table, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd. Something felt off, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. The crystalline guards stood at their assigned posts, perfect and motionless as statues. Anyone else feel like the air's a bit thick in here? Maria Torres whispered through their comm system. Tom Reed, pretending to adjust some decorations, replied quietly, "Now that you mention it, the humidity readings are slightly higher than they should be for a space station." "Keep your eyes open," Jack ordered. "Rose, stay close to the princess." Rose Parker nodded slightly from her position near Azure, her medical scanner disguised as a simple bracelet quietly taking readings of the room. The diplomatic reception continued smoothly. Representatives from 12 different species mingled, discussing trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Everything seemed perfect, too perfect, Jack thought. Then Rose's voice came through the comm. "My scanner's picking up some unusual crystal formations near the princess. They're not matching any known pattern." Before Jack could respond, Maria cut in. "Movement near the east wall. The air's bending." "Cloaking technology," Tom said quickly. "The humidity in the air. It's making it visible." Jack didn't hesitate. "Tom, increase the room's humidity." "Maria, east side." "Rose, get the princess to move casually toward the center. I'm going to create a distraction." The crystalline guards remained at their posts, their protocols not registering any official threat. But the human team sprang into action. Tom accidentally spilled his drink on a climate control panel, quickly reprogramming it while pretending to clean up. The room's humidity began to rise subtly. Jack walked to the center of the room, telling a loud joke about Earth diplomacy that drew everyone's attention. In the growing humidity, faint outlines became visible, 3 shadowy figures moving toward the princess. Maria moved silently along the wall, her years of experience letting her track the nearly invisible assassins by the slight distortions in the air. Rose gently guided Princess Azure toward a group of diplomats, appearing to be simply encouraging friendly conversation. The assassins realized their cloaking was failing. They abandoned stealth for speed, charging toward the princess. "Now," Jack shouted. Maria threw her drink, the liquid revealing the first assassin's complete outline. Tom activated the room's fire suppression system, filling the air with a fine mist that made all 3 attackers visible. The crystalline guards finally reacted, but their programmed responses were too slow, too predictable. The assassins had studied their patterns and knew exactly how to avoid them. But they hadn't studied humans. Jack tackled the first assassin, using simple physical force instead of advanced technology. Maria disabled the second with a move she'd learned in Earth's martial arts, not found in any official security protocol. Tom used the room's own climate system to create a zone of supercooled air, trapping the third attacker in a cloud of frozen mist. Rose had already moved Princess Azure to a safe corner, using her medical knowledge to create a temporary barrier by crystallizing the water vapor in the air, a trick she'd learned from studying crystalline biology. The entire attack was over in minutes. The assassins lay captured, their advanced technology defeated by simple water vapor and human instinct. Elder Moon, who had been watching from across the room, approached Princess Azure, with amazement showing in her crystal structure. "They didn't follow any protocol," she said, stunned. "They just adapted." Azure smiled, her skin glowing with vindication. "Exactly. Our enemies studied our protocols, planned for our perfect responses. But how do you plan for humans who trust their instincts and work together in ways that can't be predicted?" The human team regrouped around the princess, checking for any remaining threats, They looked messy and unprofessional compared to the still perfect crystalline guards, but no one in the room doubted their effectiveness anymore. "Well done," Azure said to her team. "Though I believe you owe me an explanation about that Earth diplomacy joke, Jack." Jack grinned. "Sometimes the best way to spot trouble is to cause a little of your own, Your Highness." The Royal Investigation Chamber hummed with frustrated energy. Crystalline investigators stood around a large holographic display, their faces showing confusion as they reviewed the attack data for the 100th time. "The patterns make no sense," one investigator said, his crystal structure clouded with annoyance. "Our computer models cannot predict where the next attack might come from." Princess Azure watched from her seat as her human security team approached problems differently. Instead of using the advanced holographic systems, they had spread old-fashioned paper notes across a table. Tom Reed had even drawn diagrams by hand. "What are you doing?" Elder Moon asked, watching Maria Torres pin strings between different notes on their makeshift board. "Our computers can make perfect connections between data points. Sometimes you need to see things with your eyes, not just numbers," Maria explained, stepping back to look at their work. "Humans are good at spotting patterns that don't fit into perfect mathematical models." Jack Stone stood studying their board, coffee cup in hand, a habit that scandalized the crystalline guards. "Look here," he pointed to several locations marked on a simple star map. "All the recent security breaches happened near crystal mining operations." Rose Parker added another note to the board. "And I've been talking to the medical staff. There's been an increase in crystal fatigue among workers in those areas." The crystalline investigators looked puzzled. "Why waste time talking to medical staff? This is a security investigation," one said. "Because everything connects," Rose explained patiently. "People talk when they're not feeling well. They notice things." Tom stepped forward with a simple tablet computer, primitive by crystalline standards. "I've been running basic security scans, nothing fancy. Found something interesting." He displayed a series of energy readings. "Someone's been using old communication frequencies, the kind your advanced systems don't bother checking anymore." Azure leaned forward, interested. "Our systems are designed to detect any significant communication." "Exactly," Jack said, grinning. "But what if someone's using insignificant communications, small signals hidden in background noise?" Maria pointed to different points on their board. "The attacks, the mining operations, the sick workers, the hidden signals, they're all connected, but not in a way your computers would think to look for." Elder Moon's crystal structure shifted with doubt. "This is all speculation based on feelings and conversations, not proper data analysis. Sometimes the best clues are the ones that don't fit into neat patterns," Rose said. "Like, why would assassins use cloaking technology that fails in humidity? That's a rookie mistake. Unless," Jack continued, "they wanted to be seen. Not caught, but seen." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Azure stood up, her crystal structure brightening with realization. "They're sending a message." Tom nodded. "Every attack has been a little more obvious than necessary. They're trying to show something." "But what?" Elder Moon asked, finally drawn into their unusual investigation method. Maria rearranged some of their notes. "Look at the pattern. Each attack exploits a weakness in perfect crystalline security. Each one shows how predictability can be used against you." "Someone's trying to prove a point," Jack said quietly. "And I don't think they're done yet." Azure studied the humans' simple paper notes and string connections. In its messiness, she saw something her people's perfect systems had missed. A warning. "How many more attacks?" she asked. "Based on this pattern," Tom said, drawing a rough diagram. "At least 3 more, each bigger than the last." The crystalline investigators looked uncomfortable. Their perfect systems hadn't predicted any of this. "What do we do?" Elder Moon asked, her usual certainty shaken. Jack looked at his team, then at the princess. "We keep watching. We keep listening. And most importantly, we stay unpredictable." Azure nodded, her decision made. Continue your investigation, your way. Elder Moon, make sure they have whatever resources they need. As the humans went back to their work, adding notes and drawing new connections, Azure watched with growing confidence. Sometimes the best way to see clearly was to look through imperfect eyes. I think, she said to Elder Moon, we're about to learn just how valuable a little chaos can be. The private royal gardens were usually silent, maintained by perfect robotic systems that never made a sound. But today, something unusual echoed through the crystal flowers. Laughter. Princess Azure sat on a simple bench, watching as Rose Parker explained Earth jokes to her. The princess's crystal structure sparkled with amusement, a sight that would have shocked the royal court. I don't quite understand, Azure said, still laughing. Why did the chicken need to cross the road at all? That's part of the joke, Rose explained, smiling. Sometimes the simplest answer is what makes it funny. From his position near the garden entrance, Jack Stone watched the scene with approval. 2 months had passed since their first crisis, and things had changed dramatically. The council won't like this, Elder Moon said, appearing silently beside Jack. The princess is becoming less formal. Less predictable, you mean, Jack corrected, and that's exactly what's keeping her alive. Across the garden, Tom Reed was showing Azure how to play a card game, while Maria Torres taught her simple self-defense moves. The princess was wearing a human-style jacket over her royal robes, another break from tradition. She laughed at breakfast today, Elder Moon said, her crystal structure showing concern. In front of the entire court, some elders nearly cracked from shock. Jack watched as Azure successfully blocked one of Maria's slow practice strikes. Would you rather have a perfect princess who's an easy target, or a living one who knows how to survive? Before Elder Moon could answer, an alert sounded. Tom's security systems had detected something unusual. The human team moved smoothly into protection formation, but Azure didn't freeze in place like she would have 2 months ago. Instead, she moved with them, already understanding their patterns. It turned out to be a false alarm, just a garden drone malfunctioning, but the response showed how much things had changed. Did you see how she moved? Maria asked later during their team meeting. Perfect tactical response. She's learning. Not just learning, Rose added. She's understanding. Yesterday she asked me about human emotions. Really asked, not just studied them like a science project. Tom looked up from his security tablet. She's even started making jokes of her own. Bad ones, but still. The team shared a laugh, remembering Azure's attempt at human humor during yesterday's security briefing. Even some of the crystalline guards had shown tiny cracks of amusement in their perfect structures. Later that evening, Azure sat with her team in their secure common room, another break from tradition. Royal family members had never socialized with their guards before. Tell me, she said, dealing cards just as Tom had taught her, why do humans value imperfection so much? Jack thought for a moment. It's not that we value imperfection, Your Highness. We value growth. You can't grow if you're already perfect. Azure's crystal structure shifted thoughtfully. My people believe perfection is strength. But watching you all, learning from you, I'm starting to think flexibility might be stronger. Life isn't perfect, Rose said gently. So being perfect doesn't help you live it. The council says I'm changing too much, Azure admitted. Becoming too human. Maria laid down her cards. You're not becoming human, Your Highness. You're becoming more yourself. There's a difference. Azure looked at her team, her friends, though that word would scandalize the council. They weren't perfect. They made mistakes. They told bad jokes. They broke protocol. But they were alive in a way her people had forgotten how to be. I used to think protecting me meant keeping everything controlled and predictable, she said. But you've shown me that true security comes from being able to change, to adapt, to live. Elder Moon, watching from the doorway, saw the princess's crystal structure glowing with a new kind of light. It wasn't the perfect, regulated glow of royal training. It was something warmer, more natural, more real. Perhaps, she thought, watching Azure laugh at another of Jack's terrible jokes, some traditions needed to change. After all, what good was perfect protocol if it left no room for life? The emergency alarms rang through the Crystal Palace, their perfect harmonic tones shattered by sounds of chaos. Princess Azure ran through the corridors with her human team, their footsteps echoing against the perfect crystal floors. The signals coming from the central data core. Tom Reed called out, his simple tablet showing readings that the palace's advanced systems had missed. Someone's broadcasting on all the old frequencies at once. Jack Stone took point, leading them down lesser-used passages. Maria, what did your contacts say? All the mining colonies are reporting the same thing, Maria Torres replied, keeping pace. Crystal structures failing, but not naturally. Someone's been planning this for years. They reached the data core's entrance, where a group of crystalline guards stood frozen, their programming unable to handle the conflicting security protocols being broadcast. Rose Parker quickly scanned the guards. They're not damaged, just overwhelmed. Too many perfect protocols at once. Like a perfect system crashing under its own perfection. Azure said, understanding dawning in her crystal structure. This is what they've been trying to tell us. The massive doors to the data core slid open, revealing Elderbright himself standing at the main console. But he wasn't alone. Several other council members stood with him, their crystal structures glowing with unusual patterns. Elderbright. Azure stepped forward, shocked. You're behind the attacks. The old elder turned, his face showing not guilt, but determination. We had to show them, Your Highness. Show everyone what we've become, and what it's doing to us. The assassins, Jack said, pieces falling into place. They were never meant to succeed. Just to demonstrate how predictable our defenses had become. Elderbright nodded. Every pattern, every protocol, every perfect response, all known to our enemies. Maria moved closer to Azure. The mining colonies. Our people are dying. Another council member spoke up. Not physically, but spiritually. We've become so perfect, so rigid, we can't adapt anymore. Can't grow. Tom's tablet beeped urgently. They've disabled the main security grid. Every perfect system in the Empire is now showing its flaws. Elderbright finished. We had to break the pattern, Your Highness. Had to show them that perfection is becoming our weakness. Azure looked around the room, seeing the pain in the council members' faces. They weren't traitors. They were trying to save their people, in their own desperate way. The attacks, the signals, the crystal fatigue, Rose said softly. All symptoms of a society too perfect to survive. Why now? Azure asked, stepping closer to Elderbright. Because of them, he gestured to the human team. They showed us another way. Showed us that adaptation, change, even chaos, these aren't weaknesses. They're survival. Suddenly, the data core's screens lit up with reports from across the Empire. Systems failing, perfect patterns breaking down, people having to think for themselves for the first time in generations. You're causing panic, Jack warned. We're causing growth, Elderbright corrected. Your Highness, you've seen it yourself. Since working with these humans, you've become stronger, more adaptable. Our enemies can't predict you anymore. Azure's crystal structure shifted as she processed this truth. Her time with the human team had changed her, made her more than just a perfect princess. There are better ways, she said finally. Ways that don't involve frightening our people. Perhaps, Elderbright agreed. But would they have listened? Would they have accepted change without first seeing the flaws in perfection? The room fell silent except for the continuing alarms. Azure looked at her human team. Imperfect, unpredictable, and exactly what her people needed right now. Help me fix this, she said to Elderbright. Not by going back to perfect protocols, but by finding a new way forward. Together. The old elder's crystal structure glowed with relief. That, Your Highness, is exactly what we hoped you would say. The real crisis wasn't the conspiracy, Azure realized. It was what came next, teaching an empire of perfect beings how to embrace imperfection. 1 year after the great system's failure, the crystalline palace looked very different. The perfect, silent halls now echoed with voices. Guards walked their routes with variable patterns. Even the crystal gardens grew with subtle, beautiful imperfections. Princess Azure stood on a grand balcony, watching her human security team train a mixed group of human and crystalline guards below. Jack Stone was teaching them how to adapt to unexpected situations, while Maria Torres demonstrated the importance of trusting instincts. "The council meeting will begin soon, Your Highness," Elder Moon reminded her, approaching with notably less rigid movements than a year ago. "How are the new education programs going?" Azure asked as they walked to the council chamber. "Better than expected. The young ones especially love learning from the human teachers. They ask questions now, something unheard of in the past." They entered the council chamber, where Tom Reed was installing a mix of advanced crystal technology and simple human security measures. Rose Parker stood nearby, helping a group of crystal healers understand the benefits of combining traditional methods with new approaches. "Are you ready for your announcement, Your Highness?" Elder Bright asked. His crystal structure, once perfectly ordered, now showed beautiful, natural variations. Azure nodded, looking at the assembled council members and representatives from across the empire. Her human team took their positions around the room, not as guards, but as honored advisors. "My people," Azure began, her voice clear and strong. "A year ago, our empire faced its greatest crisis, not from outside enemies, but from our own pursuit of perfection." The crowd listened silently, their crystal structures shimmering with attention. "We thought being perfect made us strong. But perfection, we learned, is its own kind of weakness. It leaves no room for growth, for adaptation, for life itself." She gestured to her human team. "These humans taught us something valuable. They showed us that strength lies not in being flawless, but in knowing how to handle flaws. Not in following perfect patterns, but in creating new ones when needed." Tom activated a display showing the Empire's latest achievements. Crime rates had dropped since security patterns became unpredictable. Scientific discoveries had increased as researchers learned to embrace unconventional ideas. Even the crystal mines were thriving, with new growth patterns previously thought impossible. "Today," Azure continued, "I am announcing the creation of the Human Crystal Cooperation Initiative. We will expand our exchange programs, bringing more human advisors to help us remember the strength in imperfection, while sharing our own knowledge with Earth." Jack stepped forward, presenting the formal agreement. It wasn't written on perfect crystal tablets, but on simple paper, a symbol of the changes in their society. "But more than that," Azure said, her crystal structure glowing with pride, "we are changing our empire's fundamental law. No longer will we seek perfect order above all. Instead, we will seek balance between order and chaos, between perfection and adaptation, between crystal and human ways." Elder Moon spoke up, her voice carrying years of wisdom. "The youngest crystal children now play games. They laugh. They imagine. Things we have forgotten were possible. And they are stronger for it." Azure agreed. "We all are." The chamber filled with a soft chiming sound, the crystal equivalent of applause. Even the most traditional council members joined in, their structures showing the subtle variations that now marked their society. Rose stepped forward with a small crystal flower, one that had been allowed to grow naturally without perfect guidance. Its pattern was unique, beautiful in its imperfection. "Your Highness," Jack said, grinning, "I think this calls for a celebration. A proper human-style one." Azure laughed. "Something a princess would never have done in the old days. I believe you're right. After all, what better way to mark our new beginning than with a little chaos?" As the formal ceremony turned into a genuine celebration, with humans and crystals mingling freely, Azure watched her two worlds come together. Her security team, her friends, had helped create something entirely new. a society that found strength in embracing both perfection and imperfection. "You know," she said to Elder Moon, watching a young crystal child attempt to tell a human joke, "sometimes the best protocols are the ones we haven't invented yet." Elder Moon's crystal structure sparkled with amusement. "Indeed, Your Highness. Indeed."